That's right.
So, what words of wisdom? Well, no, I got one more question before that one. So, what do you see people do that destroys the value of their deal? Like when they're trying to go to market, like they think they're being smart by saving pennies, but they're losing real dollars on the valuation.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of property it is, what kind of market you're in.
As an
You know,
operator, I know other investors are romanticizing multifamily investing, and I'm looking to learn from other investors' mistakes. I know you are too, and you found the right place. Welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Hi, everybody, and welcome to Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. I'm your host, Jerome, and I've got the pleasure of having Reid Bennett with me today. Reid, how are things in the Chicago area?
they're fantastic today.
Yeah?
Yeah, weather's nice. I don't know whether it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, or Saturday, or Sunday anymore, but it's all good around here. It's all good around here.
Do me a favor and let the listeners know how they can get in contact with you.
Sure. You can reach me anytime on my email is reid.bennett@svn.com. That's Sam Victor Nancy. You can also call me on my cell, 773-251-7342, or you can look me up on LinkedIn.
I love when people give out their cell phone numbers. They never know what they're getting into. It's good.
My office number forwards to my cell number, so I might as well give out my cell number.
Without question. Never want to miss a call.
That's
So
it.
you've got a really diverse background from my perspective. Do me a favor and spend the next few minutes talking a little bit about your background and what you've been working on most recently.
How far back do you want me to go?
We can go back. I really enjoyed the story that you told about going through the last recession. So if you're willing to go back that far, I'd love to hear people.
All right. Well, the last recession, prior to, so, starting in 2000, beginning of 2008, we actually put our first deal together with a client of ours. I have a client that had sold a number of deals, 4 and 2 in the past, and we had this 144 unit deal under contract, and he actually lost his main whale investor that invested with him. He was going to back out of the deal. We said, wait a minute, what do you need? What do you need in order to complete the deal? And I'll never forget, it was $1,560,000 was the number. So just between a few of us, we helped raise the money and became partners with him on the deal. We closed on that deal May of 2015, 2008. So it was great timing, right before the recession hit. In the interim, we were trying to keep the doors open right after that, because the deal volume dropped like 83%, almost exactly what it's done so far this year with what's going on. And we were just happy to have this investment because it continued to grow, and there was a 5-year deal. We all got out and doubled our money. And, that's not a home run, but it's a pretty good investment. When you're talking about multifamily deals, and especially what's going on in the world today. So I don't know if you want me to talk more about that particular deal, or if you want to continue about the brokerage end of what we were doing, or what do you think is most pertinent?
So I like that you have the brokerage piece, but you also have actively invested. And so, was there a big takeaway or lesson learned in doing that first deal back then?
Well, I mean, the big takeaway from that one for me was once oftentimes when we're selling a transaction, the buyer is going to come up with a number of complaints and hurdles, and that we have to, either help them get along with, or um, try to rectify. Well, this one, once it got to a point where he was discussing things that he didn't like about the deal, and I said, look, I'm with you on this one. I'm investing my money into it. I'm investing. My mother was a preschool teacher. She inherited a small sum of money, and we put all that money into the deal. I said, I'm with you on it. So if you don't like this particular aspect about how the joists are hanging in the units, we're out of it. And then he's, oh no, it's not that big of a deal. We can close on it. So I went from being a broker, which oftentimes, the buyers think that the brokers are just trying to get a deal done. They're doing anything they can do. They're trying to sweep things under the rug, maybe. I don't know what the perception is, but that's one that I catch from some of the buyers we deal with that have happened to them in the past from previous brokers. But once I said, I believe in this deal so much, I'll invest my money and my mom's money into it. The tables kind of, turned around there, and it was just a totally different relationship, partnering with a client than just simply selling it for a commission.
So that takes a little bit of courage. Why? What made you believe in the deal so much that you were willing to put your mom's money in?
Well, that particular deal, it was 144 units. It was 18 buildings, and it was by a merchant builder. So he had owned it since he built it, and he tried in 2006 or 2007 to condo convert so he started with one building to test it, and took one of the 18, I'm trying to think of how many units there were. In building number 18, I think it was, he added about $3,000 a unit. I mean, it wasn't a big conversion because it was a newer product. It was built in the 90s, and he's trying to sell it, 12 years later as a condo. He updated all the appliances. He updated a lot of the hardware throughout the unit, and that was about it. And so he spent maybe $3,000, $3,500 a unit. Found that the market in that particular, it was a tertiary market, found that it was pretty soft for selling condos, even in the heyday of 2007. And so he just put them back on the market as rentals, and he got about $150 more per unit for building 18. And so I was thinking, all right, if you're only putting $3,000 to $3,500 a unit into each one, and you do it for the rest of the units in the property, and you get $100 to $150 pop for $3,000, you just added significant value for 350 or so grand. So I just knew if you continued along with it, and that's what our client wanted to do. He wanted to continue along with the renovations, and I knew that was going to add about $2 million in value to the property, which would, along with the appreciation, just typical appreciation from increased rents, was going to be a pretty decent deal.
So did he think he was calling your bluff or something when he said, if you believe so much in the deal, invest in it, or what?
I wasn't sure. I mean, sometimes I just get a laundry list, a litany of here's what's wrong with this property. I get it all the time from the buyers. Look, it's X, Y, Z, A, B, C, D, E, F is all wrong with this thing. That's why I can't buy it. So, okay. Well, maybe I have answers for some of them. Some of them, if I don't have an answer to, I say, hey, if it's enough for you to walk away, I don't want you to be involved, in a deal that you're not comfortable with. And typically when you say that to somebody, if they really truly are not feeling comfortable with it, they're like, okay, I'm not feeling comfortable with it, I'm out. But if they were just saying that to try to, game the price, that's when they're usually like, no, it's okay. I can get past that. Which that's what it ended up being with the two of the complaints that he had with this one.
That's amazing. So was that the first time that somebody like challenged you and said, "Hey, this deal isn't all that great," or had that happened before and you're like, "Yeah,
Oh, it happens on every single deal. It happens on every deal. There's always a challenge, um, that may or may not be able to, be overcome during the transaction. But sometimes it's worse than others. But I would say every transaction, the buyers would say something like that. I mean, you buy deals. What do you say when you're looking at them?
it's falling apart. I don't know if it's going to close it, man. I just don't know, you know?"
Exactly. So you know what I'm talking about.
I need a concession, man. It's just, you know?
Yeah.
So, all right, you get in the deal. You guys do pretty well in that deal. So why not just transition and start investing full time instead of, helping trade deals on the brokerage side?
Well, that actually that was the first deal we put together that way, and we kind of figured that with the clients that we deal with, if they wanted us to invest with them, um, that we'd continue doing that and have them typically be a 5-year deal, and at the end of 5 years, we'd be rolling out of that deal and buying another deal with whoever wanted to stay in. So it just seemed like it was a great way to kind of set up an annuity within the brokerage business, and also be, on the ownership side with a small piece. I mean, and then we never wanted to compete with the clients that we sell deals to and for. So it just seemed like that, there are enough deals to go around, and there are enough clients that are interested in having, my partners and I participate with them. Sometimes they need it, sometimes they don't need it. Sometimes they like hearing, I'm with you on the deal. I'll invest with you if you need me to do that. And it just seems like once you do that, they feel that you actually, believe in it. It's not just a sale. So, why, the question though was, why didn't I just transition into ownership 100% and get out of brokerage? That's a good question. It's a good question. I think a lot of brokers want to do that. I think it might be the end game. I know for me, when I got into it in 2001, so 19 years ago, I mean, my goal was just to do this, to learn the markets and learn the areas, and what better way to do that than to be tracking every single deal and putting it all into a CRM and knowing, the thing that I like about the brokerage aspect is you see, tens of hundreds of different groups and how they analyze a deal and how they add value to a project and how they, can reposition an asset. So it's been really, I've just enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the, you know, bringing the two people together, the buyer and the seller, and creating a deal.
So it's fun. And I mean, it pays well too, without question. So, like, what do you focus on and what type of transactions are you helping people complete these days?
Well, I focus on both market rate and affordable assets. And on the affordable side, we sell deals with HAP contracts, or project-based Section 8. We also sell deals that have a low-income housing tax credit, or a light tech component, where it's just income restricted. And then we sell market rate. I mean, our sweet spot is right in between probably, $5 and $25 million. Even though I'm based here in Chicago, a lot of the properties that we work are in secondary and tertiary markets, an hour to 3 hours outside of Chicago.
So, if somebody's coming in and they want you to take them seriously, right? Because a lot of people are looking for deals and they always talk about cultivating broker relationships.
Sure.
makes you, I guess, put people in one pile versus the other?
Well, I think something that would legitimize a buyer obviously is going to be, recent transactions that you've completed. Oftentimes, if we have an asset, for example, we just closed on a 216 unit deal with a HAP contract where we brought in 17 written offers. We had a number of groups get into the document vault and look over it. We had 17 written offers, of which we kind of narrowed them down to, talking with the client, we narrowed them down to about 10 that we wanted to continue the conversation with. And then at that point, so you're talking about, especially in an affordable deal, you're talking about a deal life that can last, sometimes 18, 20 months. So if you make the wrong decision with a buyer from the brokerage angle on behalf of the owner, you could tie up your deal, 3, 4, 5 months into the transaction, and they could blow out. Maybe because they didn't have the funds or they didn't have the wherewithal to do it. So if you lose 5 months, especially, let's say you started marketing a deal last year at this time, and if you lost 5 months and then you came into 2020 and then you were in pandemic season, what would happen if you didn't close that deal in January? What we really do with that point, once we get it down to 10 or so, or whoever we think is a viable option to purchase the asset, we ask them to submit a resume, and that resume includes, the most. Typically, what we ask for is the 3 most recent deals you've closed. And if somebody gives us a sheet that has one that they closed, 15 years ago as most recent, maybe they're not as active or as aggressive as they need to be. If they show us a sheet where they own 1/6 flat and they're trying to buy a 216 unit building, they might not have the wherewithal, to take down that deal as well. And even if they do have 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 transactions in the last, 2, 3 years, we go the next step, and we talk to, if it's really getting close, maybe it's down to, 2 or 3 groups, we might take the references or the owners of the previous owners of the last, 2 deals that they purchased, and ask them for the reference to talk to that owner. Because if something happened in the 11th hour and a buyer kind of pinned a seller up against the wall and knew that they had to close and they were committed and tried to retrade them at the last second, they're usually not quiet about it if you call them up after the deal. Say, hey, how was your experience with this buyer? They usually will unleash if they had a bad experience. So we kind of vet the groups when it gets down to a small handful that way, just so we know that we're not getting tied up with a group that's going to kind of jerk the seller around. So I guess it would just be a resume. It would be recent transaction history, both of the current buyer and or their partners. So that really, I think that tells volumes.
What's up, guys? It's your host, Jerome. I just want to let you know we launched Myers Methods in the fall of 2019 with the ambition to inspire a new breed of multifamily investor. If you are interested in getting into multifamily or scaling your current business, hop over to our website at myersmethods.com to grab your free 4-step guide on how to get the ball rolling in multifamily. Now let's get back to the episode. So what happens when a syndication group comes in or a new person fresh out of syndication training comes in and they're saying they're using other people's experience or resumes? Like how does that play and what can they do to be more credible? Because I think that's one of the things a lot of people struggle with.
On the syndication side, that's a good question. I mean, I guess it would all determine who the key principals are that are signing the loan and what kind of depth they have behind it. And it'd be nice to vet that out.
So at the end of the day, you got to get to a person who has a balance sheet and some experience for the deal really to get traction.
Yeah, I mean, if you put up $1 million hard earnest money, I don't really care too much about your, who's backing you, but that's typically not going to happen, especially with a syndicated deal.
Okay. Okay. So
But yeah, but I mean, a strong earnest money, a strong EM is, might cause you to look past a few other shortcomings of a buyer
okay.
from a seller's perspective. Typically, um, it all depends. It depends on the situation.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah.
Uh,
Even though, I mean, we've seen in 2016 is really when we started seeing a lot of it. 16, 17, 18, 19, these huge day one hard earnest money deposits, um, just to try to blow people out of the water to get the deal done. We're talking about hotter transactions, maybe the Class A or the higher Class B properties, well located. We saw a lot of that. But I've noticed, even if that happens and you have hard earnest money day one, if something blows up within the deal, it still is, unless the money was already released into your bank account, which we've had transactions go that way, where the money is released upon a certain deadline. It's very difficult to get that money out of escrow if there's a dispute that comes up. So just a little note.
okay. And so you vet people out, right? And you go through this process. Have you ever gotten to the finish line? It's like, uh-oh, we made the wrong choice on who we should award this deal to?
I mean, has anybody ever retraded after we selected them?
Retrade, or this just wasn't the person who we thought was buying a deal isn't actually the people buying the deal, right? Like it's
Hmm. Um, I can't think of a deal that we had listed that we went through that kind of a vetting process. I'm trying to think hard now. Um, I mean, I can think of a time that's happened in my career with off-market deals, but I don't. We haven't had that problem with a deal um, that we marketed and ran that vetting process. But yeah, we have put buyer and seller together on an off-market transaction, and maybe it was with a seller that said, we'll never list our deal with anybody, but go ahead and bring us an offer.
uh-huh.
Um, and those are interesting transactions. We've sold a number of deals that way. I don't think it's the preferred way to do it for anybody involved. I mean, oftentimes, uh, well, in some cases, a buyer can pick up a better deal. Maybe that's kind of the perception out there. If it's an off-market deal, you're probably, you're not getting into the competitive bidding process. It's going to be a better deal. I've seen sometimes when groups think that they're getting it off market, end up paying significantly more than if it was a marketed deal. But anyway, I digress. That's probably the only time that I ever came up with a situation where the buyer did not perform once we had it, either under contract or we're negotiating a contract at that point. It was probably an off-market deal.
I'm so glad you said that because everybody says, I'm looking for an off market deal. But that
Yes.
doesn't mean that you're getting a break on the price. It's probably more because nobody else has seen it.
I've seen people overpay significantly thinking they're the only ones. And look, an off-market deal still doesn't mean that it's not being shopped by multiple brokers. I mean, you and I found that out with a deal that we sent one guy. He said, "Oh, I got this from like 5 other brokers." It's like, "Oh, okay." In fact, it just happened today. I was kicking around a pretty decent sized complex here in Chicago, and I thought I knew the perfect buyer for it. I had a conversation with him today, and he said, "Oh, you know what? We've seen this probably 4 times over the last 5 years from different people." And I was like, "Oh, okay." But it's interesting because sometimes a seller will say, I'm thinking about maybe selling this deal. They'll call up, and I specifically remember a guy that called me in Chicago and said, "I'm kicking around the idea of selling this deal." And I had my database open. I pulled up his property, and in my database, so I track every single property in existence in the markets that I work. Typically, we don't go below 50 units, so 50 units and above. So we have every deal, pictures of the deal, who the owner is, what the loan is on the property. If any other broker ever had it on the market and we found that OM or it was sent to us by somebody else, we downloaded that in. So I remember I pulled up this gentleman's property while he's telling me he's thinking about it. And I saw that there were 3 other packages of brokers that he had it on the market with them. And I said, "Oh, what happened when ABC had it in 2009? What kind of offers did they bring you?" And he's kind of quiet. And I was like, "Well, and then didn't you have it back on the market in, 2012 with, XYZ brokerage?" And, by the time I'm on the 3rd one, he's like, "Okay, yeah, so I tested the waters a couple times, but I'm still interested in selling." And you kind of know at that point that if somebody's had it, and if we have a history in our database that it's been on the market for 3 years, that they most likely are not a motivated seller. So it's good to have the histories of all the deals on there as well. And specifically the mortgages. I mean, we've had groups tell us they want to sell their properties. They've given us a trailing 12, a rent roll, all of their CapEx itemized down to, each condenser unit. And we're underwriting the deal and doing all that. I mean, early on, we were underwriting this particular transaction and getting to a number, and we're capping it out at the applicable cap rate for the market. And we're getting back to the owner and say, "Yeah, I think this is the value." And then he's like, "I didn't tell you, I refinanced it, last year, and I have a huge prepayment penalty on my on this mortgage." So that's another thing, by tracking the mortgages and knowing, you can run through 100 properties pretty quickly in our database and say, give me every property in this particular market that, has a mortgage that's coming due in the next 2 years. So that way you're kind of looking at potential opportunities that can be, you can put new debt on those deals. If let's say you have a couple properties in the database that they just put on, brand new CMBS financing. You're not selling that deal for 10 years with the yield maintenance. So knowing that stuff going into it can save you a heck of a lot of time underwriting a deal and seeing if it works, and then putting in your financing information where you think you can finance the deal, and then only to find out that you have to assume this note, or it can't be prepaid. So
yeah, those prepayment penalties usually kill the deal because the seller wants the buyer to pay for them, and that doesn't usually happen very often.
That's right.
So what words of wisdom? Well, no, I got one more question before that one. So what do you see people do that destroys the value of their deal? Like when they're trying to go to market, like they think they're being smart by saving pennies, but they're losing real dollars on the valuation.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of property it is, what kind of market you're in. I remember one of the things that, when I first started in the business, 2001, 2002, every transaction I closed until about 2007 was to a condo conversion. So if an apartment owner had a deal that he's put all new kitchens, all new baths, and plumbing and fixtures, or well, not plumbing, but fixtures, apartment grade, and it was a condo conversion market, which I don't see happening for a while, but just for example, those groups always were touting, hey, look, I just put in, new Formica countertops, and I just did, put in these hollow core doors. The condo converters are going and saying, and new kitchens and everything. They were saying, we're going to rip all that stuff out anyway. So you just spent anything you spent to do apartment quality, we're going to rip it out and do condo quality. That was one thing that kind of screwed up a lot of deals in the condo conversion phase. One thing back to the financing that I've seen groups put new debt on a deal and only take out 50 or 60% LTV. Even if it's, sometimes it's a HUD, a 223F loan where they're saying, look, I got it for 30 years fixed at 2.9%. A new buyer is going to love this. We're saying, well, yeah, you only put 50% LTV on it. So now, or even if they put 80% or 85 or 90% LTV a couple of years ago, and now they're expecting a price that's so much higher than what the assumed note is. We've kind of seen that kind of mess up some deals or mess up the number that they're expecting to get in the back end. You think of some other things. Those are the two that pop into my head right away of things that they've done.
Perfect. So don't refi if you're getting ready to sell.
Not unless you're going to put on more debt than anybody is ever going to want to assume. Or 90%, if you can get a great loan, I mean, sometimes somebody can get a fantastic loan, but yeah, I wouldn't do that prior to selling. Any kind of a refi with an onerous prepay or a timeline long enough, a long lockout.
Got it. And so the final question that I always end the podcast with is, what words of wisdom do you have for our listeners?
Well, one of the things that I think if you're looking to purchase assets or multifamily assets, I say you have to look at 50 deals, 100 deals, per one that you buy. Whether that be starting to look at them online, underwriting them, go to the property, not necessarily set up showings for every one of them, but really touch and feel a number of deals, underwrite them, see where, the first few deals that you look at where they close. Because it's always interesting to me, whenever we close a deal, and then put out the closing, announcement, happy to announce that we just closed this transaction. How many of the buyers that didn't submit come back to us and said, man, I would have bought it at that price. It's like, well, you didn't even put in an offer. But you have to look at enough deals to understand the market, because there are so many different nuances, like North Carolina, right? There's the pipe issues. I forget what it was called. We haven't closed a deal in North Carolina in a while. But what's the polybutyl or whatever?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's things like that where if you're coming in from out of town, you don't know to look for that or ask that question, in the areas where this affects the properties, you have a problem. So you have to do your homework. You have to talk to as many people. You have to look at a lot of deals. To me, it's best to pick an area, focus on that area, see what everything is selling for, see what the rents are so you know exactly when a deal is right for you to invest in.
Yeah, I remember reaching out and us chatting about a deal I was looking at, and income-wise, it made a ton of sense.
Yeah.
For unit-wise, it made 0 sense. And I don't know which one controls, but I think if you have stuff that doesn't align, you kind of wait and try to figure out, well, which one is or what it will revert to. So certainly appreciate that little nugget too.
Yeah, well, and that's why I think the best advice is to have sanity checks and have 4 or 5 sanity checks when you look at a deal. And what I mean by that is, you know, you can have your cap rate as one sanity check. I hate cap rates because um, I can make any cap rate work on a deal if I pull out expenses or add income. So cap rates to me are totally arbitrary, but they're a sanity check. You know, because if you're looking at a deal and you know, it's penciling out for you and it ends up being a 3 cap at the price they're asking, that's like, it's an alarm bell that goes off. You're like, okay, wait a minute. I'm either you know, not putting enough income in, or I'm putting, you know, sometimes when you get the P&Ls, you have a lot of the interest and finance charges. Maybe you didn't back those out. So that's the first sanity check. I mean, price per door in a market, like you said, is another sanity check. If you give me the last 12 deals that have closed just like this in the market, and you know, most of them are, you know, in the 80s or 90s, and you're trying to take a deal down for 160,000 a unit, and it's the same build as the other ones that closed in the 80s or 90s, that's another alarm bell. Cash on cash return is a sanity check. The expense ratios is a big sanity check too. If you run down and you say, if you know in your market that your expenses are running at about 4,500, 42 to 4,500 a unit, and you're coming up with your underwriting from the numbers you're receiving from the broker or the owner, that it's like 2,600 a unit, you're missing some expenses. So that's a sanity check there. And then, you know, I think we were talking about this, you know, multifamily isn't rocket science, which is why I'm in it. But there are very few deals that, you know, maybe market rate deals built up until 2000, that the expense ratio don't shake out somewhere between 46 and 54% of the income. You know, and when you're looking at deals where it's shaking out 30% of the income, you're missing some expenses. Maybe you didn't put in the right real estate tax number upon sale. And that's another thing that I've seen. I don't mean to keep going on, but as we're talking about it, the real estate taxes in every state, they're different, and they're treated differently upon sale. You know, some state or some municipalities chase sales and adjust your real estate taxes according to the purchase price. You know, others do it based on income. So that's a key issue. I mean, I had a client complain to me that they bought a deal where their taxes the year after they bought it went up 175%. You know, saying, well, first of all, did you allocate any personal property to the, did you allocate any personal property to the contract, so you can kind of reduce that hit? No, they didn't. It was 100% going to the property. And 2, they made their offer based on the taxes in arrears, because in many of the markets I deal with, the taxes are in arrears, so you are making an offer on old tax information. So that's key. So one of the things, if you're in a new market, or even if you're in a market that you're working, you need to get friendly with a really good real estate tax attorney that you can send him over the OM or send him over the property and say, what do you think if I pay $7.5 million for this multifamily asset? What do you think my taxes are going to be? And usually they'll give you quick back of the napkin ways to figure out that number, because that's huge in the underwriting of these assets.
Yeah, I mean, taxes can be 10% of income, if not more, depending on the market. So,
I mean, I've seen them 18 to 20% in our markets. And
oh,
if they're 10%, there's a sanity check. There's a sanity check for us. If they're only, you know, in single digits, which we've seen, because if you have an old owner that, you know, isn't maximizing the rents or reporting the rents, depending on what they do, you could be buying a deal that, again, I've seen them go up 100, 175% from where they were when you bought the deal.
Wow, Reid, this has been awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing all of these nuggets because I tell you, it's really easy to think you have a great deal and all you have is a lead.
Yeah. No, I mean, every deal looks great the first 2 seconds you're looking at it. So, yeah, no, appreciate it.
Well, we'll wrap it up here, man. We'll talk soon, man. Thanks again.
All right, you got it. Appreciate you
You
having
made
me.
it to this juncture, so you really love what we shared on this episode of Myers Methods Presents Multifamily Missteps. Do us a favor, give us a 5-star rating, give us a review, and share this with somebody who's interested in multifamily investing. Until the next time, the pack is with you.